Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin by emphasizing something fundamental: the power of your presence, the value of what you bring into any interaction, into any relationship, cannot be overstated. We all know what it feels like to be in the presence of someone who demands your attention, your energy, your validation. And among the most pervasive examples of this are narcissistic individuals. These people, in their quest for admiration and recognition, are driven by something deeper, an emptiness they cannot fill on their own. Narcissism is a complex and often misunderstood personality trait that lies at the heart of many interpersonal conflicts. At its core, narcissism is marked by an excessive need for admiration, a grandiose sense of self-importance, and a lack of empathy toward others. Those who exhibit narcissistic behaviors often view themselves as superior, deserving of special treatment and unwavering validation. They are driven by the desire to be admired, celebrated, and elevated above others. However, beneath the surface of this grandiosity lies a deep-seated vulnerability and insecurity, a fundamental weakness that many narcissists desperately try to cover up by building a facade of invincibility. Narcissism manifests in a range of behaviors that can leave those around the narcissist feeling drained, manipulated, or devalued. One of the most defining features of narcissism is the need for constant attention and validation. Narcissists tend to surround themselves with people who will admire them, flatter them, and feed their inflated sense of self-worth. They often enter relationships with the expectation that others will cater to their needs and reinforce their self-perceived, using others as mere tools to maintain their sense of superiority. They thrive on praise, recognition, and adoration, believing that their worth is validated by how much others elevate them. However, this need for constant admiration isn't just about vanity. It's rooted in a deep sense of emptiness and insecurity that the narcissist tries to fill with external validation. At the heart of narcissism is a fragile ego, one that is constantly at risk of being punctured by reality. In truth, many narcissists are unable to sustain a healthy sense of self-worth without constant feedback from others. This makes them highly dependent on the opinions of those around them, creating a dynamic in which their self-esteem is contingent upon how others perceive them. The narcissist's ego is like a house built on sand. It needs a steady stream of admiration to remain standing. The narcissist's dependency on external validation is what makes them particularly vulnerable. They may appear confident, charismatic, and in control, but this is often a mask they wear to shield themselves from feelings of inadequacy. Deep down, they fear that without the constant admiration of others, they will be exposed as weak, unimportant, or insignificant. Their self-worth is fragile and contingent upon how others view them, and this dependence on external praise creates a profound sense of instability. A narcissist's relationships often mirror this dynamic. They seek out people who will provide them with the validation they crave, but these relationships are rarely based on mutual respect or understanding. Instead, they are based on a transactional exchange in which the narcissist's need for admiration is met by others who, often unknowingly, feed into this cycle. The narcissist may manipulate, charm, or even intimidate others to maintain this dynamic, all while ignoring or disregarding the needs and feelings of those around them. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, is typically absent or severely diminished in narcissists. Their world revolves around themselves, and the emotional needs of others are secondary or irrelevant. When someone withdraws from a narcissist, it disrupts this delicate balance. The narcissist's sense of importance, built on the foundation of constant admiration and validation, begins to crumble. Without the attention of others, they are forced to confront the emptiness they have long been running from. This absence exposes their vulnerability and their inability to function without the admiration of others. Narcissists often struggle with this reality because they have constructed a false sense of self that is reliant on external validation. When that validation is removed, they are left with an existential void, a sense of powerlessness that they cannot easily overcome. In many ways, narcissism is a defense mechanism, a way of protecting the fragile self from feelings of worthlessness or insignificance. However, this defense mechanism is not sustainable. The need for constant admiration and validation eventually leads to a cycle of manipulation, entitlement, and disappointment. Narcissists are never satisfied, always seeking more attention, more praise, more adoration, but this endless pursuit is ultimately hollow because it fails to address the underlying issue, the narcissist's inability to validate themselves internally. Without the constant stream of external validation, they are left exposed, vulnerable, and often helpless. This is where the absence of others plays a crucial role. By withdrawing your presence, you force the narcissist to confront their own emptiness. Your absence removes the external source of validation they depend on, and this often leads to feelings of helplessness and confusion. The narcissist may struggle to understand why you have withdrawn and may react with anger, guilt-tripping, or attempts at manipulation. However, underneath these reactions lies a deep sense of helplessness and despair, as the narcissist is left to face the harsh reality that their self-worth cannot be sustained by others alone. What's important to recognize in this dynamic is that your absence is not about causing harm to the narcissist. It is about recognizing your own worth and asserting your boundaries. The narcissist's helplessness in your absence is a direct result of their inability to maintain their inflated sense of self without external validation. It is not your responsibility to provide this validation, nor should you feel obligated to cater to their needs at the expense of your own well-being. Understanding the dynamics of narcissism helps to explain why withdrawing from such a relationship can be so powerful. It disrupts the narcissist's reliance on others for their sense of identity and forces them to confront their own vulnerabilities. In conclusion, narcissism is a defense mechanism that shields a fragile ego from feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. However, this defense is unsustainable and creates a cycle of dependence on external validation. The narcissist's need for admiration makes them vulnerable to the absence of others, as they rely on external sources of praise to validate their sense of self-worth. When you withdraw your presence, you expose their fragility and force them to confront the emptiness they have long avoided. This is why your absence can leave a narcissist helpless, not because of any harm you intend to cause, but because their identity is built on the constant reinforcement of their grandiose self-image, and without it, they are left with nothing but the truth of their own vulnerabilities. When we speak of absence in the context of narcissism, it's not simply the physical act of leaving, but the powerful emotional and psychological impact that withdrawal can have on someone who is deeply dependent on others for validation. Narcissists, as we've discussed, live in a world where external approval is the foundation of their self-worth. They crave admiration, attention, and adoration not merely as a form of flattery, but because they are unable to sustain their identity without constant affirmation. Their sense of self is inherently fragile, and when they can no longer rely on others to prop them up, they are left facing a profound vulnerability. In this sense, absence is an incredibly potent tool. The narcissist world revolves around them, and they function like a black hole, drawing in all the energy, attention, and validation from others around them. It's an exhausting dynamic for those who are caught in it, often leaving people feeling used, manipulated, and emotionally drained. Narcissists have a way of making others feel like they are the center of the narcissist universe. They offer charm, charisma, and an intense focus that can be all-consuming. But this is not out of genuine love or care. It's because the narcissist needs others to reflect back their importance, to validate their existence, to fill the emotional vacuum inside them. Without this constant stream of attention and admiration, they are left unmoored, unsure of who they are. This is where absence becomes a profound disruption to the narcissist's carefully constructed sense of self. When you withdraw your attention or stop feeding their need for validation, they are forced to confront the reality that their sense of worth is not inherent, but rather dependent on others. The narcissist's entire identity is built upon the idea that they are important, special, and deserving of admiration. And when that external validation is no longer available, it threatens the very foundation upon which they have built their persona. This creates a deep sense of helplessness in the narcissist, as they now find themselves without the constant stream of attention that they once took for granted. Your absence doesn't just create a void in the narcissist's life, it exposes the underlying emptiness they have been trying to mask. Narcissists often go to great lengths to protect their image, projecting an air of invincibility, superiority, and control. They may demand attention or admiration through boastfulness, manipulation, or emotional manipulation. However, beneath the surface, there is always a fear that they are not truly as valuable as they portray themselves to be. This is why they seek external validation so desperately. It fills the void they carry inside and serves as proof that they are worthy of love, admiration, and respect. But when your absence is felt, the narcissist has to face their own reflection without the distorted lens of others' validation. This confrontation with the truth can be incredibly destabilizing. For the first time, they may experience an emotional crisis because they no longer have the familiar reassurance that comes from being constantly admired. Their self-worth is no longer a product of the approval of others. Instead, they are left to grapple with the uncomfortable truth that they may not be as important as they once thought. This realization is often painful and can lead to intense feelings of inadequacy, confusion, and helplessness. In many cases, narcissists do not know how to cope with this absence because they have never developed a true sense of self outside of the validation they receive from others. They lack the emotional tools to process their feelings of vulnerability. Instead of confronting the emotional emptiness they feel, they often try to manipulate the situation to regain control. They may attempt to guilt trip, charm, or even punish those who have withdrawn in an effort to restore their sense of dominance and importance. This behavior is a reaction to the helplessness they feel, a desperate attempt to regain the power and validation they have lost. However, these efforts are rarely effective in the long term. The narcissist's sense of helplessness when faced with your absence is a reflection of their dependence on external validation. They have built their life around the constant need for admiration, and when that is no longer forthcoming, they are forced to confront the emptiness that they have been running from. The absence of your attention makes them realize that their self-worth is not as secure or solid as they once believed. They may feel unmoored, lost, or even invisible without the admiration of others to cling to. In some cases, this realization may even provoke a crisis of identity for the narcissist. They may feel as though they are losing themselves, as their entire sense of worth has been tied to external validation. This can create a deep psychological struggle as they are forced to face the fact that they are not, in fact, the all-important figure they have projected themselves to be. This confrontation with their true self, the self they have been avoiding, is often uncomfortable and painful. It's an experience that narcissists typically do everything they can to avoid. But here's the crucial point. Your absence doesn't just leave the narcissist helpless. It presents an opportunity for growth and healing, both for you and for them, if they are willing to change. For you, the absence signifies a reclaiming of your personal power. By removing yourself from the equation, you are asserting your right to be treated with respect and dignity. You are no longer a pawn in their game of validation and control. And for the narcissist, the absence forces them to confront their own emptiness. Whether they recognize it or not, they are presented with an opportunity to face their own insecurities and begin the difficult work of healing. It's important to recognize that this process is not about hurting the narcissist. It's about taking care of yourself. The narcissist's helplessness in the face of your absence is a reflection of their own emotional instability and dependence on external validation. When you stop feeding into that cycle, you are not just depriving them of attention, You are creating the space for both of you to grow. Your absence may be uncomfortable for them, but it is also a catalyst for potential change. For the first time, they may have to question their own beliefs about self-worth and begin to understand that true validation comes from within, not from others. Ultimately, the absence you create serves as a mirror for the narcissist, reflecting back the reality of their emotional dependency. It strips away the illusion of control and superiority they have maintained, revealing the vulnerability and helplessness that lie beneath. Personal power is a concept that goes beyond mere physical strength or influence over others. It's the ability to control one's own thoughts, emotions, and actions, regardless of external circumstances or the behaviors of others. It is the ability to stand firm in one's beliefs, to assert boundaries, and to walk in alignment with one's own values without being swayed by the approval or validation of others. When it comes to relationships, particularly those with narcissistic individuals, understanding and cultivating your own personal power is paramount. In these dynamics, your absence can serve as one of the most potent demonstrations of your personal strength and sovereignty. The narcissist is deeply reliant on the energy, attention, and validation they receive from others to prop up their fragile self-imposure. They look to others for confirmation of their worth, often creating a dynamic where they exploit or manipulate people to fulfill their own emotional needs. Their entire sense of self is built on the constant reinforcement of their importance by those around them. They need to be seen as special, as superior, as deserving of admiration and deference. Without this external source of validation, their fragile ego becomes destabilized, revealing their inherent vulnerability. By stepping away or withdrawing from a narcissist, you are not just removing yourself physically, you are reclaiming your emotional autonomy and your personal power. You are making a conscious decision to stop feeding into their need for constant approval and attention. And in doing so, you are not only taking back control of your own emotional energy, but also signaling to the narcissist that you will no longer play the role they expect you to play. This act of detachment is a powerful statement that says you are no longer a part of their narrative, nor are you going to let them define your worth. Your personal power comes from your ability to recognize your own value, independent of anyone else's opinion. Narcissists have a way of making you feel like you are only worthy if you serve their needs, if you reinforce their image, if you validate their sense of self. But when you step away from that dynamic, you are making it clear that your worth is intrinsic, not reliant on being in their orbit. You don't need their validation to know that you matter. You are showing yourself that your happiness, your peace of mind, and your sense of self-worth are not negotiable or contingent upon their approval. This realization is the foundation of personal power. Many people in relationships with narcissists fall into patterns of seeking approval, of second-guessing themselves, or of feeling guilty for not giving more to the narcissist. This is because narcissists are masters of manipulation, often drawing people into their emotional drama or convincing them that they are the only ones who can provide what the narcissist needs. But the key to breaking free from this cycle is recognizing that your emotional well-being is your responsibility, not the narcissist's. When you detach from them, you reclaim that responsibility. Your peace, your happiness, your mental and emotional health are now in your own hands. This is the true essence of personal power, the ability to make decisions based on your own needs, not the demands of others. It's also crucial to recognize that reclaiming your personal power does not mean seeking revenge or wishing harm upon the narcissist. It's about walking away with a sense of strength, clarity, and purpose. You no longer need to engage with someone who only brings negativity or chaos into your life. The narcissist's desire for control and validation is rooted in their own deep insecurity, and that is not your burden to carry. When you recognize this, you free yourself from the grip they have on your life. You stop allowing them to control how you feel, how you think, or how you act. You take back your agency and restore a sense of dignity and self-respect. In a world where many people seek approval from others, stepping away from a narcissist is an act of immense self-awareness and courage. It is an acknowledgement that you are not here to live in service to someone else's ego. You are here to live as your own person, to develop your own strength, to pursue your own goals, and to create a life that is meaningful and fulfilling to you. This is the essence of personal power, the ability to define your own existence without being tethered to anyone else's perception of you. Moreover, this act of asserting your personal power often has a ripple effect. The more you stand firm in your boundaries and your sense of self, the more you teach others how to treat you. By walking away from the narcissist, you are setting a powerful precedent for future relationships. You are telling others that you are not willing to tolerate manipulation or emotional abuse. You are teaching them to respect your boundaries, your emotional needs, and your autonomy. This act of empowerment can shift the dynamics, not just with the narcissist, but with everyone in your life. When you reclaim your personal power, you also set the stage for growth. You create space for personal development and self-discovery. Being free from the constant pull of the narcissist's demands allows you to focus on what truly matters to you, your goals, your passions, and your personal well-being. Without the distraction of the narcissist's constant need for attention, you can cultivate deeper relationships with people who see and respect you for who you truly are. You can build a life that reflects your own values and aspirations, one that is not dictated by someone else's insecurities or need for control. In conclusion, personal power is not about dominance or control over others. It's about self-mastery, self-awareness, and self-respect. When you choose to step away from a narcissist, you are exercising your personal power in a profound way. You are asserting that you are not a pawn in their emotional games, and that your self-worth is not dependent on their validation. You are taking responsibility for your own emotional well-being and reclaiming control over your life. This act of detachment is an affirmation that you are worthy of respect, that your peace is valuable, and that you are in control of your own destiny. In walking away from the narcissist, you are not giving up power. You are taking back the power that is rightfully yours. When you step away from a narcissistic individual, it's not simply an act of withdrawal, it's a profound assertion of your own self-worth and a powerful display of emotional independence. Narcissists thrive on control, and one of the primary ways they maintain their grip on those around them is by creating an emotional dependency. They manipulate, gaslight, or charm others into a position where those individuals feel compelled to remain in their orbit, often at the cost of their own mental and emotional well-being. By withdrawing, you are no longer participating in this cycle of dependency, and this is something that can render the narcissist helpless in ways they cannot easily understand or overcome. One of the key tactics narcissists use to maintain control is through emotional manipulation. They make their victims believe that they are indispensable, that without them, the narcissist's life would fall apart. They often create an illusion of necessity, convincing others that their presence is essential for the narcissist's emotional survival or happiness. Narcissists can be masterful at making you feel as though you are the only person who truly understands them, the only person who can meet their emotional needs. This can create a false sense of obligation in the other person, leading them to feel responsible for the narcissist's well-being and happiness. It's a dynamic built on dependency, where the narcissist remains in control and the victim feels trapped in a cycle of constant giving, emotional labor, and validation. By withdrawing from this dynamic, you disrupt this carefully constructed illusion of need. The narcissist may initially respond with anger, frustration, or attempts to guilt trip you into returning. But the underlying truth is that your absence exposes the lie at the core of the narcissist's manipulation. They are not helpless. They are not incapable of functioning without you. Narcissists thrive on creating a narrative where others feel as though they are essential to their emotional survival, but the reality is that they are more self-sufficient than they let on. When you step back, you show the narcissist that their sense of importance is not anchored in their relationship with you. They may try to make you feel guilty for abandoning them, But this is merely a tactic to restore the false narrative they have created. This shift is incredibly unsettling for the narcissist because it forces them to confront the truth. Their sense of worth does not come from others, and their ability to function does not depend on anyone else's presence. Narcissists often believe they are the center of the universe and that the people around them exist to serve their emotional needs. Your withdrawal strips them of this illusion, leaving them to grapple with the uncomfortable reality that they can no longer rely on someone else for validation or emotional support. This confrontation with their own dependency is not something narcissists are equipped to handle easily, and it can leave them feeling unmoored, vulnerable, and helpless. What's crucial to understand here is that the narcissist's helplessness is not about their genuine emotional vulnerability or need for help. It's about their inability to process the loss of control over the relationship. Narcissists often maintain relationships not out of a desire for genuine connection or mutual support, but to fulfill their own emotional needs, to reinforce their self-image, and to maintain a sense of dominance. They rely on others to reflect back their greatness, to bolster their fragile self-esteem, and to keep their emotional state in balance. When someone steps away, it disrupts this arrangement, leaving them in a state of confusion and powerlessness. They no longer have access to the constant supply of validation that they have come to depend on. The narcissist's emotional helplessness in the face of your absence can also trigger a deep fear of abandonment. Narcissists often harbor a profound fear of being left alone or unimportant, and this fear is directly tied to the fragility of their self-worth. They have a deep-seated need to be admired and adored because it serves as a shield against their own feelings of inadequacy and worthlessness. When you leave, you remove their shield. You leave them exposed to their own internal fears and insecurities, and this can lead to intense feelings of helplessness and panic. But this emotional helplessness is not something you are responsible for. Narcissists are not helpless because they are truly incapable of surviving without others. They are helpless because they have never learned to cultivate a sense of self-worth from within. Their dependence on others for validation and emotional sustenance is a reflection of their own emotional immaturity and insecurity. When you step away, you are not abandoning them in a way that causes them real harm. Rather, you are removing yourself from an unhealthy dynamic and asserting your own boundaries. Your absence is not a punishment, but rather an opportunity for both you and the narcissist to face the truth of the situation. They are not as invincible or self-sufficient as they believe, and they have to learn to function without depending on others for validation. While this may seem harsh, it is in fact one of the most important lessons that the narcissist can learn. Without the constant reassurance of others, the narcissist is forced to come to terms with their own emotional emptiness. The absence of the validation they rely on can be a wake-up call that forces them to face the fact that they cannot continue to manipulate others to fulfill their emotional needs. This process, although painful for the narcissist, is ultimately necessary for their growth if they are ever to confront their underlying insecurities and develop healthier ways of relating to others. For you, stepping away from the narcissist is an act of empowerment. It is a recognition that you do not exist to fulfill someone else's emotional needs at the cost of your own well-being. Your worth is not tied to their validation or approval. By withdrawing, you are asserting your own value and making it clear that you will no longer be a part of their cycle of emotional manipulation. You are choosing to prioritize your own emotional health and to step out of a toxic relationship that is being built on falsehoods and manipulation. And while the narcissist may feel helpless, the reality is that their sense of self-worth is not your responsibility. It is up to them, just as it is up to you, to learn how to validate themselves and stand on their own. Your absence is a powerful reminder that they must confront their own emotional dependency and begin to build a more solid and self-sustaining sense of self. When you step away from a narcissist, you disrupt not just the immediate relationship, but also the entire ecosystem of behaviors and dynamics that sustain the narcissist's sense of control. Narcissists are not just dependent on the validation and admiration of others, they rely on a constant flow of emotional energy to fuel their fragile self-image. This energy is typically drawn from the people around them, and they have become adept at manipulating these individuals to keep the cycle going. By removing yourself from the situation, you are cutting off a crucial source of emotional supply for the narcissist, and this forces them to face something they are usually unable to confront: their own emotional emptiness. Narcissists are skilled at creating relationships that revolve around them. They often position themselves as the center of attention, cultivating a sense of importance and superiority in the minds of those they interact with. They may use charm, charisma, or even emotional manipulation to keep people hooked, convincing them that their presence and support are essential to the narcissist's well-being. The narcissist's identity, in many ways, is built on the reflection of others. They need people to believe that they are unique, special, and deserving of admiration. This is why they work so hard to maintain control over the people they interact with. They rely on these people to reflect back their grandiose sense of self. However, this sense of control is fragile. It is not based on mutual respect or genuine connection, but on manipulation, deceit, and the constant need for affirmation. Narcissists struggle with feelings of deep insecurity, and this leads them to create relationships where they are always in the dominant position, receiving attention, praise, and admiration. They often use others as tools to bolster their own self-esteem, without ever considering the emotional cost to the people around them. Their interactions are transactional in nature. They give just enough to keep people hooked, while extracting everything they need in terms of validation and emotional energy. When you remove yourself from the equation, you challenge the very foundation of the narcissist's carefully constructed world. Your absence creates a void that cannot be easily filled. The narcissist may try to replace you with someone else, seeking out new sources of validation, but they will always struggle to recreate the emotional energy you once provided. The relationships they attempt to form after your departure will likely be shallow, superficial, and short-lived, as the narcissist cannot sustain genuine reciprocal connections. They lack the emotional depth and vulnerability to form true, meaningful bonds with others. Instead, they need to feed off the admiration and attention of others to keep themselves afloat. This absence can be an incredibly destabilizing force for the narcissist. For the first time, they are forced to confront the emptiness inside them without the external validation that has always masked it. Narcissists often avoid facing their own feelings of inadequacy, insecurity, and self-doubt by relying on others to provide them with a sense of worth. When that source of validation is removed, they must face the uncomfortable reality that their sense of self is not as solid or unshakable as they had believed. This can lead to an emotional crisis for the narcissist as they realize that they are not as invulnerable as they once thought. This crisis can take many forms. Some narcissists may try to reassert control by attempting to manipulate or guilt trip those who have left. They may try to play on your sympathies, appeal to your sense of duty, or even make false promises of change in an effort to regain your attention. However, this is simply a defense mechanism. It's an attempt to restore the sense of control and validation that has been taken away from them. Deep down, they know that their emotional state is no longer dependent on you, and this realization can be terrifying for them. However, the narcissist's helplessness in this situation is not an indication of genuine vulnerability or emotional need. Rather, it reflects their inability to regulate their own emotions and manage their sense of self-worth. Narcissists are often emotionally immature, relying on external validation to maintain their emotional equilibrium. When that validation is withdrawn, they do not know how to cope with the emotions that surface. Instead of facing their own internal struggles, they may react by lashing out, trying to reassert control over others in an attempt to regain the validation they so desperately need. In many cases, this emotional crisis forces the narcissist to confront the reality of their own loneliness and self-doubt. They are no longer able to manipulate others into providing the emotional supply they require, and this can be a deeply humbling experience for someone who has built their identity around the need for constant admiration. This confrontation with their own vulnerability is something they have spent a lifetime avoiding, and it can leave them feeling helpless, lost, and disoriented. For you, stepping away from the narcissist is a crucial step in reclaiming your own emotional energy. You no longer need to feed into their toxic dynamic, where you are constantly giving while receiving little in return. By removing yourself, you protect your own mental and emotional well-being, allowing yourself the space to heal and grow. You are not just escaping the narcissist's emotional grip, you are also reclaiming your sense of self and rebuilding your own emotional reserves. In essence, by removing yourself from the narcissist's sphere of influence, you are taking control of your own emotional state and reasserting your personal power. What is often not understood by those who are involved with narcissists is how much of their emotional energy has been siphoned off without them even realizing it. Narcissists do not simply demand attention. They drain those around them of emotional resources, leaving others feeling depleted, exhausted, and unfulfilled. By stepping away, you stop this emotional drain and regain your autonomy. You are no longer at the mercy of the narcissist's demands, and you are no longer a part of their cycle of manipulation. Ultimately, your absence is not just a removal of yourself from the narcissist's life. It is a powerful statement of your own worth and independence. It demonstrates that you will no longer tolerate being used or manipulated. The narcissist may struggle with the loss of your emotional supply, but this is an important part of the healing process for both of you. For you, it is the opportunity to reclaim your emotional energy and restore balance to your life. For the narcissist, it is a harsh but necessary lesson in emotional self-regulation and the realization that their sense of worth is not dependent on others. Your absence forces them to confront their own emotional inadequacies and challenges them to take responsibility for their own emotional health. Whether or not they choose to do so is up to them, but your decision to walk away will always serve as a reminder of the importance of self-respect and emotional independence. In conclusion, stepping away from a narcissist is not an act of weakness, nor is it an abandonment of the relationship. It is, in fact, one of the most powerful demonstrations of personal strength, emotional independence, and self-respect. The narcissist's entire identity is often built on manipulating others to provide constant validation, emotional energy, and control. When you withdraw, you are effectively dismantling the very foundation of their emotional stability, forcing them to confront the emptiness they have long tried to ignore. Your absence serves as a reminder that your worth is intrinsic and not dependent on any external source, especially someone who has relied on you to fuel their own sense of importance. You take back control of your emotional well-being, and in doing so, you force the narcissist to confront their own dependency and face the uncomfortable truth of their own vulnerability. This moment of helplessness may be unsettling for them, but it is ultimately an opportunity for growth, both for you and potentially for them, should they ever choose to take responsibility for their emotional health. Walking away from a narcissist is a reclaiming of your personal power. It is the choice to no longer be part of their emotional manipulation, to assert your boundaries, and to prioritize your own well-being. It sends a clear message. You will no longer be a source of supply for their insecurities, and you are deserving of respect, love, and genuine connection. By choosing to step out of this toxic dynamic, you create the space for true healing, personal growth, and the freedom to build relationships that are built on mutual respect, trust, and authenticity. The narcissist's helplessness in the face of your absence is not an invitation to return, but a powerful reminder that your emotional autonomy is non-negotiable. It is a victory for you, one that demonstrates not only your self-worth, but your courage in choosing a life free from emotional exploitation. Ultimately, you are not just walking away from a toxic individual, you are walking towards a healthier, more empowered version of yourself, one that understands the value of emotional independence and self-respect,